TCU has added Houston wide receiver Joseph Manjack to their roster in the transfer portal. He's a first-day starter, a day-one starter for the TCU Horned Frogs at that wide receiver spot. But I think they need to go get one more wideout in the portal. I'll tell you why next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, I'm your host, Steven Simcox. Today's show is brought to you by the College Football Playoff. College Football Playoff will be on TNT. I'll tell you more about that later on in the show, how you can watch it. Busy day, a lot of news. Jamel Johnson, the safety for TCU that went into the transfer portal a few weeks ago, he has withdrawn his name, according to Chris Hummer, from 247 Sports, and will be returning to TCU this season. Cam Cook, running back, on his way out. Looks like Jeremy Payne will be the man. But we start today with the news that Joseph Manjack, wide receiver out of Houston, will be a TCU Horned Frog. And if you listen to the show for the last couple of weeks, you knew this was a possibility. I got a couple tips from some guys that cover Houston or close to the Houston program that said, hey, watch for Manjack and TCU. There's some mutual interest there. Frogs got him on a visit last week. They get him signed, and he will be joining this team. A couple seasons ago was really productive. Over 500 yards receiving. Got in the end zone a lot this past year. That dipped down. But I want to let you hear from Parker Ainsworth, host of Locked On Cougs, about Joseph Manjack, what he brings to the table, who he is as a player.
Well, they say if you love somebody, you're just happy to see them happy, even if it's not with you. And man, Houston fans feel that way about Joseph Manjack. I'm host of Locked On Cougs, Parker Ainsworth, and it sounds like y'all got Joseph Manjack out of Houston, and he was a fan favorite. No ill will from him on this end. We hope you treat him very, very nicely. He does very, very well, unless you play Houston with him, obviously. Now, Manjack, I guess, you could go statistically, talk through like his 10 touchdowns. He had 90 catches in his time there and all the stuff he did on the field. But really, he had like a cultural presence for Houston. He returned to Houston from USC as a tomball kid. Big time playmaking, had a knack for making timely catches. He also did things like when we threw a pick, he'd force a fumble. He'd, play with no gloves and his shoulder pads halfway hanging out. He was a great, like one of the best receiving or blocking wide receivers. I can't even talk about it. Like it was just so incredible. Incredible guy to have on the team and in the locker room. He did have one scuffle on the sideline as, what was that, a junior last year in the American Athletic Conference. Kind of went like viral for a hot second, and it very clearly is like he was telling someone else to be less selfish. He got a little violent, like physical football will do, but he's a great football player, great kid. Obviously things didn't work out. He wanted a little bit change of scenery before he ultimately tries to make the jump to the NFL, and I think he's got the intangibles to get his way there. Treat him well, treat him nice. As far as on the field stuff goes, again, he's a sure catch, big guy, 6'3", strong. I think he's like 210 or something like that. We used him over the top a lot on like our trickeration kind of stuff behind the line of scrimmage and went over the top with him. But he also is a great guy to run a screen pass right behind. So use him well, please. This Parker Ainsworth Locked On Cougs, cheering on Joseph Manjack wherever he is at.
Thank you, Parker. That's great stuff. That's his assessment. Joseph Manjack, who was at Houston for the past 3 seasons, actually started his career at USC. And I agree with a lot of what he said there. The vibes are good. That's not a very scientific answer, but it's true. He plays the game with no gloves. He looks different out there. He seems tough. He mentioned the blocking. That's a really cool aspect of his game because Savion Williams, who they're losing, he did that very well. But getting to the receiving standpoint of this thing, it's no secret. TCU is chasing wide receivers in the transfer portal. Why is it? They're losing Savion Williams. They're losing Jack Besh. They're losing J.P. Richardson. Now, I think Manjack is a really good addition. 577 yards 2 years ago. Production dipped this past year down to 371. Willie Fritz comes in. I was talking to Parker about this the other day. He said, look, the offense struggled just overall, passing game especially, had kind of a musical chair situation at quarterback. All those things worked against Joseph and the rest of the wide receiving core. Part of the reason why he thought, hey, I need to find a new place to go and hopefully have more production with one more year of eligibility left. Joseph Manjack is a possession wide receiver. He is someone that can move the chains. He's very good at working underneath. He's adept at catching the ball, getting past that first defender, spinning out of a break. he does all that well. Now, they did take some shots over the top with him. And oddly enough, watching just highlights of him over the past few seasons, 90 receptions over 3 years. That's really good. There was one play against TCU a couple years ago where he was lined up in the slot, and he went on what looked like it was going to be a slant, but the top of the route, he kind of stutter stepped. He gets to the outside. He runs basically a go route to the sideline, and they hit him on that play. He had a really good game against Texas a few years ago where they hit him on a few deep passes. He showed some ability against Oklahoma State where they threw the ball behind him on a back shoulder fade, and he just went up and snagged the ball from the defender. But Joseph Manjack is going to do his best work in the slot. This is an inside wide receiver. That's where he was most effective during his time for playing for Houston. And so I like the addition. I think he's a day one starter. But to me, this is not a Jack Bech replacement or a Savion Williams replacement. This is J.P. Richardson replacement, which is good. You need that player. And having Joseph there as your starter, along with Jordan Bailey, potentially Major Everhart, that's fantastic. You need to go get one more guy. And the guy I would target if I were TCU is DeJon Stribling, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma State. But you need another player on the outside who can win one-on-one matchups, get those 50-50 balls, go make plays down the field, and improve that vertical passing game. Because you're losing both of those players in Savion Williams and Jack Bech. Now, Eric McAllister coming back, he should be really good. And he showed flashes this year. Honestly, was probably their best big play wide receiver. If you're just talking about raw numbers, getting down the field, making plays, stretching the field vertically. So you got that sorted out. Now you got a dude, Manjack, who can play on the inside. Go get one more wide receiver on the outside. The job's not done yet, but I love what he brings to the table. And a couple of years ago, when he was super productive for Houston, he was doing a little bit of everything. But you watch the tape, a lot of crossing patterns, a lot of quick like out routes, in breaking stuff, get in, get out, get the ball, get upfield and make plays. Parker talked about making some things happen over the top and some like trick play situations. He had some big plays this year, but they were a little misleading. Had a 27-yard touchdown in the game against Utah. But if you watch the highlight, I mean, he basically catches a tunnel screen, takes it to the house. Leadership, intangibles, checks all those boxes. Ability to play at that inside wideout spot, checks those boxes. But you have to go get one more wide receiver in the transfer portal, and it needs to be somebody who can make big plays on the outside. One thing I think we'll realize in 2025, I like Josh Hoover. This offense, it developed, it evolved. I thought it grew as the season went on. These wide receivers were really good. Like elite type of good. You are losing a ton of production. And I like what Malcolm Kelly can do as far as developing that position group. Kendall Briles has done a very nice job of using a creative scheme to get guys open, to create one-on-one matchups. But you're losing some real deal talent. I mean, at least 2 NFL type wide receivers. We'll see what happens to J.P. Richardson through the draft process. And so now you have somebody that at the college level can come in and be super productive and can do it from that slot position. And you have a good rotation behind him. It's now about finding out who's going to be your dude on the outside. You have some young players as well that could step into that role. We'll see what happens with Terry Shelton as a true freshman. Deuce Ezukama is a name to know. Jakyle Baker. But I believe you need a veteran presence at that other outside wide receiver spot. And it needs to be somebody who's been productive at the college level. But I do love the pickup of Joseph Manjack. Parker mentioned it. Brings the intangibles to the table. Tough, physical player. TCU needs more of that. They need somebody who can block on the outside, especially with all the screen passes they run. He fits this system well. I think he's been ready to rock and roll from day one when he steps on campus. This is a day one starter. You have to go get one more, though, at that wide receiver spot. Can't let that urgency go yet. And Stribling, He visited Miami. I know he's visited Ole Miss. TCU's got to stay in contact with him. Have to open up the checkbook, open up the pocketbook, and say, listen, we need a dude. And we have a great track record of developing players at this spot. Come play for us. You need one more. But you find a day one starter in the transfer portal. You also lose your starting running back in the transfer portal. I'll tell you about that next here on Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. First, we need to talk about FanDuel, though. They are one of our fantastic sponsors. Been rocking with us for a long time. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. They make the sports betting process really simple and easy for you. I've told you about it before. You hit on one $5 bet, you get $150 in bonus bets. Again, one $5 bet, you hit on that, you get $150 in bonus bets. You can bet on live NFL games. You can bet on NFL games live, let it play out, see what the props are, see what the over-under is, the spread. Do it in the middle of the ball game at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. Place that first $5 bet, get $150 in bonus bets. Official betting partner of the NFL, also a proud sponsor of Locked On Network, college hoops, college football playoff, NHL. It's all happening right now. Great time to be a sports fan. Great time to join FanDuel. Let's also talk about PrizePicks. You can download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege and get $50 instantly when you play $5. PrizePicks is very simple. You either go up or down on some stat props for different players. You can make your holidays bigger and brighter with PrizePicks. It's the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. Join now because it's the holiday season. PrizePicks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use that code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. We appreciate them as well. So some surprising news. I spoke yesterday about Kavorian Barnes, who was a running back from UTSA, has had kind of an odd career, was really good for a couple seasons for the Roadrunners, had over 800 yards in 2022, 700 yards in 2023. And then last season, production just kind of mysteriously dropped off completely. And I was talking to Javi Cardenas, who covers UTSA for the Rivals Network. He said, listen, this is a guy that dealt with some injuries. Not sure if he was fully healthy this past year. Some other young backs stepped up, and suddenly he got lost in the shuffle. I feel like that's just a depth piece. That's a guy that you bring in. You say, hey, if he can turn back the clock a little bit, be healthy, be active, and show some of the things that he showed at UTSA, and that's a huge plus. Good change of pace back for a room. But if not, small risk, or it's a low risk situation, I guess I should say. Cam Cook, who was a starting running back for TCU this past year, he has officially entered the transfer portal. Cam this past season, 460 yards on 119 carries, 9 touchdowns, about 4 yards per carry. We talked all year about the struggles that TCU had in this run game. But they figured out a workaround with Savion Williams running the ball. And I really believed that their assessment of the situation coming in the portal was, we're banking on these young guys stepping up and making something happen. And I thought Cam Cook would get more opportunities. I also felt like he sort of came on towards the end of the year and showed some talent. Now, I will say, looking back at the stats, his best game was Oklahoma State, 7 carries, 47 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a touchdown run against Arizona, but only had 20 yards rushing, had 26 yards rushing against Cincinnati in the season finale. I believe you saw the writing on the wall. Also, this tells us the staff is like, okay, Jeremy Payne, that's our guy going into next year. So your running back room, as it stands right now, going into next season, Jeremy Payne, Trent Battle, Nate Palmer, who will be a redshirt freshman, didn't really play this past season, and then John Denman from Palestine Westwood, who will be a true freshman and was a really special back. The issue I have with the running back room right now, I feel like you got a lot of similar types of backs. Now, we'll see. Jeremy Payne, Nate Palmer, can they put on some bulk in the offseason and not have such a slight build? Maybe. I like what Jeremy Payne brings to the table. He can catch the ball in the backfield. I thought he showed that he was adept at run blocking and pass blocking last year. I felt like they need to give him more opportunities. So he's most likely your starter. You've got a few guys behind him that can give him a spell. Trent Battle, but we know who Trent is at this point. I mean, he's backup running back and special teams guy, and that's fine. That's his role, and he does it well. Nate Palmer, year under his belt, see what he can do. And then Kavorian Barnes, who I think is just a Dominic Johnson replacement, essentially, because Johnson also hit the portal earlier this week. I believe in these young players. I think they can improve. I think they can get better. I will say, if they knew Cam was leaving, they've also offered Terrion Stewart from Bowling Green, who had over 800 yards this year and is more accomplished running back. That's the type of player that I would at least look at now. Because we can talk about the offensive line struggles. I think the O-line is going to be better this year. Even though it looks like they missed out on Howard Sampson, who was their first tackle target. He's going to Texas Tech, according to the latest projections. But I feel like the O-line will be better next season. They're going to rework some things up front. They've got some interior linemen coming back. Your running backs have to have good vision. That was where Cam Cook struggled. Patience, all those things. Can someone emerge and show that consistently? Because last year you saw flashes of it week to week, but there was nobody who was doing it on a consistent basis. So that's a huge key in my mind. Who's going to emerge as that every down back type of figure? I believe they're banking on Jeremy Payne being that guy. But this is a tough world of college sports now, man. I mean, Cam Cook is a dude that was highly rated, did what he was supposed to do, got ready to play, had an opportunity this past year. About mid-season, they pivot and go a different direction, and that's basically it. You cannot survive next season with some sort of hybrid Wildcat package. And you might say, well, Steven, just put Haas Haney back there in that Savion Williams role. No, I'm not totally against that. I think you can use that in spots. But if Haas Haney is the future quarterback, you don't want his only job to be running quarterback power and quarterback buck sweep left and right 10 to 15 times a game. That's just exposing him to take unnecessary hits on a week-to-week basis. You got to figure out a better plan and a way to run the ball effectively with your running back room next season. And I really thought they'd give Cam Cook one more opportunity, one more year, at least a few games in 2025 to show what he could do and maybe change the perception of him as a player. But that's life in the big city sometimes. Best of luck to him. I'm intrigued to see where he goes because, there's potential there. It's just all about finding someone who thinks they can unlock it and say, you know what? That's a dude who is highly rated out of high school. It's kind of like, I used to do a show with Q, who's now on ESPN radio, Q Myers. And he was a big NFL guy. And he would talk about how in the NFL, if you're a first round pick, even if you wash out, you're probably going to bounce around to 2 or 3 more teams because all these scouting departments look at it and they say, well, he's a former first round pick. He's got talent. We just have to find a way to use it effectively. So I think Cam's going to get another chance because he was a highly rated running back and somebody's going to say, well, you know what? We can find a way to do it. And best of luck to him and them as they move forward. But TCU might be in the market again for another running back after Cam Cook leaves. Frogs retained a starter who had entered the portal, and they're getting him back. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. College football playoff coming up. You can watch it on TNT. It's that time of year. The college football playoff is back. With the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting action and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers looked up at the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. It's tough to do that on a daily basis. No disrespect to TNT. Excited to see what they do with college football playoff coverage. And I'm excited to watch the college football playoff. But man, it's a bummer to read about SMU and Texas being in the college football playoff. TCU's got to get back there. Got to do it soon. They're trying to do that by adding pieces in the transfer portal. One guy that they had targeted, Devin Turner from Northwestern, he announced that he is signing with Baylor today. 33 tackles this past season, experienced player in the back end of that Northwestern defense. He's going to Waco instead of Fort Worth. But some news on the safety front. Jamel Johnson, who entered the transfer portal shortly after the Cincinnati game, has had over 90 tackles in his time at TCU so far. He's coming back. TCU was able to retain him. And I am pleasantly surprised that this happened. This gives you more experience at that safety spot. Jamel played every game this year, and he has shown an ability to come up and make plays in the run game, to be somebody who can run with athletic tight ends and receivers and make plays in the passing game as well. And this is big because he left, and then Richard Toney also entered the portal. We'll see what happens elsewhere. Bud Clark has a decision to make. Is he going to come back for one more season, or will he move on and try to get to the NFL? But this is significant because Jamel Johnson, to me, there were times where he struggled, but he looked like one of these kind of foundational pieces for TCU moving forward. A dude who just make plays, would come and make big hits. And Andy Avalos, who spoke with the media today, I'll have more about that tomorrow, but he spoke with the media today. And in year 2 of his system, who is going to be able to step up, make plays, build on this continuity. They went and got Ansel Denbu from Washington State on the D-line. They're trying to rally that position. And safety is one of those spots where you need communication. This defense is banking on continuity. And really the only starter that you lost, you're bringing him back now. So that's huge news for this TCU team. A dude that can make plays on the ball. So losing Turner is a bummer. And that's a guy that I was intrigued by. But now that you get Jamel back, I think it sort of eases that pain. He'll get back into practice, see where they're at. And I'm starting to hear some murmurs about Bud Clark coming back as well. Which it feels like Bud's been playing at TCU for 9 years. And I love him to death. I'm excited for him. But if you get 2 of these experienced safeties back when you thought you were losing both and you were having to rebuild that spot, that allows you to allocate those resources in different places. So maybe you go get a corner now, depending on how you feel about Avery Helms' health and where they're at with some of these young guys. Maybe use that another running back or a wide receiver, but you have the ability now to kind of divvy these funds around. So TCU, they land Joseph Manjack in the portal. Cam Cook leaves. Jamel Johnson coming back. Need one more wide receiver. Need an offensive tackle. Need a tight end. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Frogs have a visitor on campus from LSU that could fill that tight end position that Drake Dabney will be leaving. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team. We do it here every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast.